The chief looked shocked. Then he clapped once slowly. Correct. The crowd gasped, then cheered. Drums played. People danced. Some shouted Obina's name. But then the chief smiled strangely. As promised, he said, you win 5 cows and a wife. Her name is Madam Ijeoma. She is the wealthiest widow in Acom village. The cheering stopped. People stared. She is 60, someone whispered. She's buried 3 husbands, another said. Obina stood frozen. But I'm 16, he said softly. It is tradition, said the chief. A promise made to the spirits cannot be broken. Obina turned to look at the crowd. No one spoke for him. Even Mama Nwok sat silent, her blind eyes wet with tears. That night, Obina packed a small bag and tied his grandmother's wrapper around his waist. He cried by the river alone. He did not want a rich wife. He wanted to study, to teach, to be free. But in Ijinma, tradition ruled stronger than dreams. And so, the poor boy wiped his tears and began his journey toward a wedding he never asked for. The road to Acom village was long and dusty. Obina walked with heavy feet, his eyes red from crying. In his hands, he carried a small goat, his only bride price. The animal bleated softly, unaware of the burden it carried. Behind him, no family followed. Only the wind moved with him, as if the spirits themselves were silent. He had bathed in the river at dawn. He had eaten nothing all day. His heart felt like a stone. Mama Nwok had hugged him tightly that morning, whispering, "Spirits walk with those who suffer quietly." But even her words could not ease his pain. Acom village stood near tall palm trees, with wide compounds and smooth red soil. It was richer than Ijinma. People there wore fine cloth, had large homes, and cooked with meat every day. But Obina noticed their eyes. They stared, laughed, and gossiped. "There he is," one woman said. "So small," another whispered. "Madam Ijeoma will finish him in 1 week." He entered the compound of Madam Ijeoma, led by her servant, a quiet girl named Yor. The house was big, with carved doors and shiny pots. A goat roast smoked in the yard. Musicians played drums. Children danced in circles. Then she came. Madam Ijeoma stood tall, her back straight like a broomstick. Her eyes were sharp, like blades. She wore a red and gold wrapper, with gold rings on her fingers, ears, and even her toes. Her hair was long and dark, tied high. Her smile did not reach her eyes. "So this is the prize," she said, touching Obina's cheek. Her fingers were cold. Obina lowered his eyes and nodded. The villagers filled the compound. The wedding began. Drums beat. Women ululated. Men drank palm wine and shouted blessings. Obina wore red beads and a large wrapper made of shiny cloth. But he did not smile. He looked like a boy walking to his grave. When the ceremony ended, they led him into the main hut, where a wide mat lay on the floor. Madam Ijeoma entered, humming softly. She closed the door with a thud. Obina sat in the corner. He placed his mat far from the bed and lay down, facing the wall. He shivered, though the room was warm. His heart raced. His hands shook. He wished he could disappear. "I am your wife now," she said, sitting on the bed. "You must serve me with strength." Obina said nothing. He closed his eyes. The night grew quiet. Outside, frogs croaked and owls hooted. The drums faded. The fire crackled low. Then, at midnight, a scream pierced the night. "Aha!" Obina sat up, heart pounding. Madam Ijeoma stood at the center of the room, holding her head, eyes wide with fear. She was trembling. Her voice shook. "There was something on your chest." Obina looked at his own chest. Nothing was there. "A bird? No, a spirit. It sat on you. It glowed. It looked at me with red eyes." Obina blinked. What are you saying? I saw it. I saw it. You are not just a boy. What have they given me? She rushed to the door and opened it, gasping for breath. Servants came running. Yor held a lantern. Madam, are you hurt? But Madam Igioma only pointed at Obina. That boy is not normal. Obina sat silently. The glow of the fire touched his face gently. He didn't speak. He didn't move. Yor looked at him with wide eyes. The villagers who had mocked him began whispering again. But this time, they did not laugh. That night, Obina did not sleep, and neither did Madam Igioma. That night, as the fire outside faded into ash and silence filled the compound, Madam Igioma tossed and turned on her mat. Sweat covered her forehead though the night breeze was cool. Her eyes fluttered. She was deep in a dream. But it was no ordinary dream. In the dream, her door creaked open by itself. A white bird, glowing like the morning sun, flew in and perched on Obina's chest. He was sleeping, peaceful and still. The bird turned its head and looked straight at her. Its eyes burned red, its voice deep and echoing. You have taken what does not belong to you, it said. Return it, or you shall lose your soul. Madam Igioma tried to scream, but no sound came. She reached out to push the bird away, but her hands passed through air. The bird rose high, spreading its wings. Her hut filled with golden light. She jolted awake with a loud gasp. Her body was shaking. She tried to sit up, but her legs felt heavy, like iron chains held them down. Her arms trembled. Her heart beat wildly. She turned to the corner of the room where Obina lay. He was fast asleep, his chest rising slowly. But something about him had changed. His skin glowed faintly, as if sunlight lived inside him. A calm breeze moved through the hut though no windows were open. She pulled the wrapper around her and called out, her voice cracking. Yor rushed in with a lantern. Madam, what happened? Call Babajima, Madam Igioma whispered. Now, not later. Go. Yor ran into the night. An hour later, the old healer Babajima entered the hut. His walking stick tapped the ground as he stepped slowly inside. His hair was gray, and his eyes sharp. He smelled of bitter roots and river herbs. Madam Igioma pointed to Obina. Something is wrong with him, or with me. I don't know. Babajima crouched beside the sleeping boy. He placed his hand on Obina's back and closed his eyes. Silence. Then, Babajima gasped and pulled his hand back. He stared at Obina's back. 3 marks were there, marks that looked like tiny waves drawn by the river itself. They glowed faintly under the lantern light. This boy is not just a boy, Babajima said. He carries the blessing of the River Mother. Madam Igioma's mouth dropped open. The River Mother? Are you sure? I feel her presence, Babajima whispered. She has chosen him. You must be careful. Madam Igioma sat in silence. Her hands shook. Her heart pounded. The River Mother was no simple spirit. She was ancient, older than the trees, stronger than kings. It was said that she watched over the pure-hearted and punished the greedy. But I only married him through tradition, Madam Igioma said, her voice weak. The River Mother does not care for excuses, Babajima said. Return what you took, or suffer the loss of your soul. When he left, Madam Igioma sat alone. Obina still slept. His face looked calm. No fear, no anger, just peace. From that day, Madam Igioma changed. She brought Obina fresh food in the morning. She gave him new clothes and opened her storerooms to him. She told the servants to treat him with respect. She even asked Yor to teach him reading and counting. But Obina did not smile. He ate little. He spoke only when spoken to. At night, he cried softly, covering his face with his wrapper. He missed Mom and woke. He missed the small hut in Ijinma. He missed his freedom. And yet, he remembered her words. "Be strong, my child. Your suffering is a door." He repeated those words in his heart each day. As the days passed, the glow on his skin became stronger. He walked with quiet power. Birds followed him when he went to the compound well. Flowers bloomed where he stepped. People in Acom village started whispering again, but now with wonder. "That boy is special. Did you see his eyes? They shine at night. Maybe he is a spirit's child." Even Madame Igioma avoided looking into his face for too long. She feared what she might see there. But Obina said nothing. He kept his pain inside, letting it grow like a seed. And the spirits waited. The days in Madame Igioma's house began to shift like the turning of a slow drumbeat. Obina, once the crying boy with bare feet and bent shoulders, started walking freely through the compound. No longer watched like a servant. He walked with calm steps, quiet eyes, and a silence that made others step aside. His skin glowed deeper. His arms became strong from lifting water pots and tending the small garden behind the kitchen. His back stood straight, and his voice became sure. He did not speak much, but when he did, people listened. The house servants who once ignored him now called him Master Obina. They bowed slightly when he passed and offered him the first plate at mealtime. The cooks gave him roasted yams wrapped in fresh leaves. Yor, the maid, greeted him each morning with warm eyes. Even the dogs followed him around the yard. Madame Igioma watched everything. She brought him new wrappers, bright and clean, and told him to throw away the torn ones from Ijinma. She brought him books with thick covers and long stories. She had a table placed in his room and gave him his own lantern for night reading. She brought him food herself, fresh mangoes, spicy fish, soft pounded yam. But she also started watching him too closely. She would sit across from him and smile, though her eyes did not smile. "Where do your dreams come from?" she asked one afternoon. "I don't know," Obina said softly. "Who was your mother?" she asked the next day. "She died the day I was born." Madame Igioma leaned closer. "And who was your real father?" Obina stood up and walked away. He began avoiding her. He spent more time in the garden, talking to Yor, feeding the chickens, or just sitting under the mango tree. But Madame Igioma always found him. Her questions grew sharper, her eyes colder. There was something hungry in her face, like a lion hiding in tall grass. One evening, Obina walked to the river behind the village. The sun was low. The water moved gently, as if whispering. He knelt by the edge, dipped his fingers in, and closed his eyes. "Spirits, I don't know what she wants," he whispered, "but my heart is not safe." He sat there until night came, his eyes still on the water. That night, he had a dream. He stood in a dark forest barefoot. A soft wind blew. From the shadows, a woman stepped out. Her face was kind. Her hair was long. She wore white and had skin like his own. He knew her. "Mother," he said, tears rising. She placed her hand on his chest. "She wants to steal your gift," she said. "You must leave before the moon is full." Obina nodded. "But I don't know how." "You were born of water and truth," she said. "The spirits walk with you. Trust them." He woke up before the rooster crowed. His heart was beating fast, but his mind was clear. He got out of bed, opened the small bag under his mat, and began packing. He placed one clean wrapper inside, some roasted groundnuts, and the small wooden carving his grandmother gave him. The moon would be full in 3 nights. He had to leave before then. The gift inside him, the River Mother's blessing, was not something to be stolen. It was to be lived, protected, and passed on. Obina looked out the window, where the moonlight touched the mango tree. Soon, the boy who once walked to his wedding with tears in his eyes would walk again. But this time, toward freedom. The wind carried whispers through Madame Igioma's compound that night. The moon hung low, half full, casting pale light over the garden. Inside the servants' quarters, Yor tossed and turned on her mat. Then she heard it, soft mumbling from the next room. She pressed her ear against the wall. It was Obina. His voice was slow, sleepy, almost like a song. She wants to take it. The gift is not hers, the river. Mother says go. Yor sat up, heart pounding. She had always sensed something unusual about him, but now her thoughts raced. She wrapped a cloth around her shoulders and rushed to Madame Igioma's hut. "Madam," she whispered through the wooden door, "Obina is speaking in his sleep." Strange words. The door swung open fast. Madame Igioma stood there, eyes wide. "What did he say?" she demanded. Yor repeated the words. Madame Igioma said nothing for a long moment. Then she smiled, but it was not warm. "It is time," she said. The next morning, Obina woke to find his door locked from the outside. The windows were shut, the light dim. His mat had been removed. Only a jug of water and a bowl of dry cassava sat in the corner. He knocked softly. "Yo, please, why am I locked in?" But no one came. In another room, Madame Igioma sat with Baba Jima, the old healer. She whispered her plan. "I want to do the calling ritual," she said. "I want to draw his spirit out and take the river mother's power for myself." Baba Jima raised his eyebrows. "You cannot steal what is given by the spirits. That boy was chosen." "I don't care," she snapped. "If I take his blessing, I will never grow old. I will rule 3 villages." Baba Jima stood. "This is dangerous. He carries the mark of the river." She leaned close. "You will help me, or I will find someone who will." But Baba Jima looked into her eyes and said, "No, this boy has the mark of the river. If you harm him, you curse yourself." Without warning, Madame Igioma slapped him across the face. "Get out!" she screamed. "Old fool!" Baba Jima left in silence, shaking his head. That night, Yor tiptoed through the dark hallway, holding a small key. Her hands trembled as she unlocked Obina's door. "Quick," she whispered. "Before she wakes." Obina stepped out, barefoot, carrying only the small cloth bag he had packed days ago. His eyes met yours. "Thank you," he said softly. She nodded. "Go to the river. Go fast." He ran, his feet quiet on the dirt path, heart pounding like drums. Past the mango tree, past the quiet goats, past the stone shrine, and into the woods. He did not stop until he reached the sacred river. The moon lit the water like silver. The air smelled of leaves and wind. Obina fell to his knees at the river's edge, breathing hard. He had escaped, but the true journey was just beginning. Obina reached the river just before the sky began to pale. The stars above him blinked gently, and the water moved slowly, like a mother rocking her baby to sleep. He fell to his knees at the riverbank, heart pounding, hands shaking. Tears rolled down his cheeks. His chest ached with pain too deep for words. "Mother," he whispered, staring into the dark water. "Take me back. I am tired." The trees stood still. The frogs stopped croaking. Even the wind held its breath. Then the river began to glow. Soft golden light spread across the water. Ripples danced in circles. Obina blinked, afraid but unable to look away. From the center of the river, a figure rose. She was tall, shaped like a woman but made of water and light. Her hair flowed like the current. Her eyes sparkled like stars. She stepped onto the shore without making a sound. Obina gasped and bowed low, forehead touching the earth. The river mother touched his head gently with one finger. Her voice was soft but filled with power. "You were sent to wake the spirit of truth in the land of greed." Obina's lips trembled. "Why me?" I am just a poor boy. She smiled. Because your heart is pure. Because you cried when others laughed. Because even in pain, you did not forget kindness. He looked up, eyes filled with tears. Will I ever be free? She knelt beside him and placed her palm on his forehead. Freedom lives in truth. Truth lives in you. Golden light burst from her hand. Obina's eyes closed. His body became still. He fainted. The river mother looked at him one last time. Then she faded back into the glowing water, and the light slowly disappeared. The forest became quiet again. The river returned to its gentle song. 3 days passed. Obina woke in a small hut made of mud and palm leaves. The air smelled of herbs and smoke. He turned his head and saw a familiar face. Maman woke. His grandmother smiled, her blind eyes glowing softly. She touched his cheek. The river brought you home, she said. He sat up slowly. His body ached, but his heart felt light. He took her hand and held it tightly. Did you see her? I saw her in my dream, Maman woke whispered. She told me you had done what no one else could. Word spread quickly through Ejinma and beyond. They said Obina had walked into the river and returned 3 days later without a single scratch. They said he had met the river mother herself. They said his skin now glowed like the morning sun. And they also spoke of Madame Igioma. She cannot walk, some said. She cannot see, others whispered. She screams at night, saying the river took her eyes. The villagers of Achem grew silent with fear. No one laughed at poor boys anymore. No one mocked the weak. People visited the river and left gifts of yam and honey. Obina stayed in the village, walking beside his grandmother again. He spoke little, but when he did, children gathered to listen. They saw more than just a boy. They saw a spirit son. Obina walked the familiar path back into Ejinma, his feet quiet on the red soil. The same trees swayed in the wind. The same goats bleated in the fields. But this time, something was different. This time, the villagers did not turn away. They came out of their huts, mouths open, eyes wide. It's him, someone whispered. The boy who lived with the river mother. The river son, they said with wonder. Obina bowed his head and smiled. He walked straight to his grandmother's hut and helped her sit in the sun. Children gathered around, waiting to hear his voice. Instead of resting, Obina began to build. With the help of neighbors, he cleared a piece of land behind the old shrine. He made bricks from mud, cut wood from fallen trees, and thatched a roof with dry grass. Within 1 moon's passing, a small school stood, strong and simple. He called it House of Truth. Poor children came first, those who once had no sandals, no lunch, and no hope. Girls and boys sat side by side, holding chalk in eager fingers. Obina taught them about herbs, about kindness, about riddles and stories from the elders. He taught them how to listen to the wind and how to hear the voice behind silence. One afternoon, a familiar figure walked into the village. It was Yor, carrying a small bag and wearing a calm smile. I want to help, she said. Obina nodded. There is space for you here. Yor became a teacher, guiding the little ones and telling stories of truth and courage. The children loved her gentle voice and her warm hands. Together, she and Obina turned the school into a place of hope. One day, a messenger arrived with a large box wrapped in silk cloth. It was from Madame Igioma. Inside were gold earrings, coins, spices, and a note that read, "Forgive me. I was blind long before I lost my sight." Obina took the box and walked to the river. Without opening it again, he placed it on the water and whispered, I leave this to the spirits. Let them decide. The box floated for a moment, then sank slowly into the deep. The villagers watched in silence. That evening, Obina stood under the sacred tree. the same one where he had once solved the riddle. "I was once poor," he said. "I was once afraid." But the spirits do not forget the pure of heart. The people clapped and ululated. Children danced. Elders nodded with pride. Weeks later, Obina married a humble girl named Adiz. She was quiet, strong, and kind. She wore no gold, only fresh flowers in her hair. Their wedding was small but full of joy. And in that village, under the watch of the river, they lived in peace. At night, when the moon is high and the firewood crackles low, the elders of Ijinma sit in circles and tell the tale of Obina. Their voices rise and fall with the wind, and the children listen wide-eyed, holding their breaths. "He cried when he married her," they say, "but she screamed when the spirits showed up." The little ones giggle. The older ones nod. Some say Obina was not just a boy. "He was a prince of the river," they whisper. "The river mother sent him to test the greedy." Others say, "No, he was only a poor child with a strong heart and a quiet spirit." But that was enough. The story never grows old. They tell how Madame Igioma, with all her gold and pride, tried to take what was never hers. How she smiled at the boy, but hid her hunger behind gifts. How she dreamed of stealing his blessing. Children always ask, "Did he ever love her?" The answer is always the same. No, but her greed made her lose everything and gave him his future. They speak of how the river rose and how light poured from the water. How Obina fainted and returned with power not born from war, but from truth. How he built a school. How he taught with kindness. A carving of Obina now sits near the sacred tree, the same place where he answered the riddle that changed his life. The carving shows him with open hands and soft eyes, a book in one hand and water flowing from his feet. People place flowers at the base. Children touch it for luck. When the wind blows through Ijinma, it carries a whisper through the leaves. Kindness is power, and those who hear it walk a little slower, speak a little softer, and remember the boy who cried on his wedding day, only to become a legend.